Welcome to Talk Art. It's a SOLA production, and SOLA is the Society of Local Artists here in the Bay Area. It's a nonprofit club that meets once a month. And we do the show once a month, and today we have two artists with us, and they're going to tell us how their art has changed their life and how their life has changed their art. And we've got Nancy Wheeler, and we've got Mimi Kearns. Kern or Kearns?
Kearns.
Kearns, pluralized, sort of. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. We've got some of their artwork here, and we've got also some of their artwork which is just going to show on the TV. And first we're going to talk with Mimi. Now Mimi, this is a nickname. Your given name is actually?
Camille.
Camille, and Kearns is from your married name.
Correct.
Correct, okay. Now Mimi grew up in San Francisco, and you got your nickname in college in Berkeley, or did you get it when you were younger?
No, I got it when I was a baby.
When you were a baby?
Mm-hmm.
Baby, did your...
Me.
Yes, really?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Here I thought maybe they were like opera lovers or something. No.
They were as well.
Yeah, a friend of mine had a gallery called Mimi First. M-I-M-I-F-I-R-Z-T, and I thought it was some sort of a...
Me first?
And she said, no, it's because, Mimi First. Oh, okay. Anyway, so as a child, you drew when you were a little girl. This is where your art love started very early. Your parents, your dad brought home these little booklets to write memos on, and you turned them into little storybooks.
Right. I illustrated my stories.
Do you remember any of the stories you did, or what kind of things you drew?
They were all short stories, and they all had illustrations. And
like with dogs and cats and little kids?
Probably. Dogs and cats.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think it was still.
And it was about your dogs and your cats because...
No, I think I was just, it was fantasy.
I was making a joke on the Mimi again. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I did want to talk to you a little bit about being in college in Berkeley at Cal in the 60s. And there, you weren't an art major, though. You didn't get into art. You kind of got into art because your best friend was an art major, and you were a...
No, that wasn't at Berkeley. I was in Oregon, actually, and my roommate was into art. She was an art major.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what were you studying?
I was studying sociology.
And then when did you get into weaving? Is that at Berkeley?
I got into weaving post-college. I was sick of academia, and I wanted to throw myself into art.
So now, all right, let's get the timeline here. You were in Oregon. You grew up in San Francisco. You went up to Oregon.
Yes.
And then
I transferred to Cal to be with my future husband.
Okay. And so that's when the whole anti-war movement was going on.
Correct.
And so you had an interesting story you told me just last night about how you were obviously taking an art class there. Was it at the college? I
took electives throughout college.
Okay.
In art.
Yeah, sure. We all did, sort of. And you were asked to paint or draw something about the war.
Right.
So what did you draw?
So I drew a conscientious objector in jail. And the assignment was to draw something about the war.
Okay.
But my teacher disapproved and thought that it should have been something combative or a flag, someone holding a flag. And so I didn't get a good response to my subject matter. Yeah.
Well, you were a Berkeley student, and it was during the Nam War, and
true.
Yeah. So well, it kind of. So you were a Berkeley hippie too, right? I mean, that was the whole thing. You were getting in that whole.
Let's see. No bra, black. Wore a lot of black. Yes, I suppose I was.
Okay. So.
Drugs.
So you started. You weren't a weaver though in
college.
Berkeley. No.
Correct.
Okay. But when you went to Mexico City. You became a weaver, and you were in Guadalajara in Mexico City with your fiance. Actually, been married then at that point?
We were married.
You got married.
I brought my loom down to Mexico with me.
Okay, and you got married in the classic mini dress because you were a hippie, and it was the time. And so then you. Time just went on, so things changed and everybody changes, and you end up, it's like, well, now we're going to have a family, so I guess we better start to get our competition thing going back again because we need to make money, and so you're actually very competitive. You said earlier when you were in high school, you're competitive.
Right. I was a swimmer. I was in competitive swimming.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you found yourself so driven that you actually had to back out so you could have more
More social life.
More social life.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what I want to talk about now is that because this streak in you, you're painting and you're entering competitions.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me about what's going on with your artwork today.
Currently?
Yeah.
Well, I just I guess a couple of weekends ago, I was in their annual Fine Arts League of Cupertino Fall Festival and won first prize for the oil and acrylic
How did you go
category.
from being a weaver to being an oil painter?
Well, there was a big gap between weaving and painting.
Yeah.
There was nursing and children in between.
Okay, so you started taking art classes again? Or?
Yes, I started taking art classes again.
Okay, and how long have you been painting in oil?
About 8 years.
8 years. Well, you're a fantastic painter. In fact, I met you originally
thank you.
by entering a solo art show a year ago, and you
Right.
actually won
Second
prize. That's really nice. Now we've got a couple of photos here that we can bring up, some JPEGs that we can bring up on the camera. So let's see, we've got 2 of them that we have online. So one of them is called
Ready for My Interview.
And then the other one we've got up right now, actually, if you take a
Is
look
the
over there,
landscape.
take a look at it, it's the landscape.
And that's 5-2.
It's called 5-2. And what does 5-2 mean? Actually, it's Roman numerals 2.
It is, because I go up to Shasta area a lot.
Oh, it's Highway 5.
It is.
Number 2.
Correct.
Okay, all right, very
Yes.
good. And now it's down from there. And then the other one, if you could bring the other photo up too, please. There it is. Okay, now this one actually got into a show.
Mm-hmm. That's the one that I was telling you about, the Cupertino show.
Yes. Now this one, you explained to me earlier that you really got into the whole outfit the guy was wearing ready for his interview. But I looked at it today, and I noticed that you've got this kind of like spiky red horns here.
True.
And so he's an evil guy?
No, I just decided that I didn't want to fill in a form and instead have someone who's ready for their interview but really isn't there.
Okay.
And who is this person that's interviewing?
I hope he doesn't get hired by my firm.
So I just kind of have fun with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you like to do a lot of layering in your artwork, in your oils? And
I
that
do.
was part of what we just saw, was that
Yeah.
you had a painting behind the individual, and then you did this very light figurative work, and then you worked really a lot of work on his clothing. You put all these folds. It's really quite interesting. And you won an award with this one too, you said, right? At the Cupertino?
This one,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's very nice. Now you're also going to be taking your artwork along with a couple other people you know to Spain, and you're having not a competition, you're having a show.
An exhibit.
In Barcelona.
Yeah.
Oh, how exciting. What an artistic town.
It
The city
is.
is just amazing. So tell me about this opportunity that you've actually developed yourself, right?
Right. Well, I was there earlier this year, and I saw art in a couple of salons in this particular castle, and approached the executive director, who was open to having a show, and I decided to theme it from California to Catalunya and do a group show so that I wouldn't have to schlep as much artwork over myself, and also just involve others in the atmosphere.
That's
So,
great.
Yeah.
Now, have the people you're inviting, have they been to Barcelona before?
Yes, they have.
Okay, so there's a familiar sense about it. It's not
But the
quite-
group is evolving, so probably by the time this happens in '08, there may be some that haven't been there yet. I don't know.
So this is going to happen in
In
April,
May
you
of
said?
'08.
In May. Yeah. So after Open Studios, you're going to do Open Studios
I
because
think so.
you live in Saratoga.
Right.
So you do the first weekend of May, and then off you go to Barcelona. So you've got a lot of work to do between now and you get ready for Open Studios, get ready for the show, and all the packing and all the international stuff you have to do for that. Let's talk about. I think I don't know how much time. How much time do we have left? Floor director, can you tell us? Nope. I don't know where we are. Okay, I think we're coming down to the last couple minutes for you, Mimi, and I do want to talk about the piece you have in here. This beautiful piece back here, and can you get this? Can you get this piece over here? We've got a cow painting with a red sky, and they're standing in white fog. What are they standing in? It's red, white, and blue. It's called red, white, and blue, or patriotic cows.
It's called albino patriots.
Ah, okay.
But it could also be called cooling your heels, because they could be in ice or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
However, I did call it Albino Patriots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, can you tell me about this painting?
Well, there's 3 cows.
Oh, come on. Now,
Well, you know, again, it's from my trips up north and being around wide open spaces, a lot of cattle ranches, and just being enamored with cows, which I've always been. I guess a city girl, I don't know, cows are just really interesting to me.
Oh, I love their faces.
Yeah, so I have fun with the cows. I've done a lot of different cows paintings.
For a while, they were really in vogue, too. You know,
For a while.
In the 80s, they were cows and pigs were both really.
In the 1800s.
No, I mean, for the artsy things and craftsy things, you saw them all over. And I think in the 90s, the black and white cow patterns were really popular too. So I love the cow. I think the triangular. It's like 2 triangles upside down to one another that make their face, and it's just a really. I think it's very intriguing to a lot of artists. Like pears are also with that shape. It's very human.
It's 3. It's the 3. That's the golden rule, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, triangles are the smallest, are the most simple shape, right? 2-dimensional shape. So I think that's probably what draws us to that bit. Let's see. Now you were telling me that you like going north, as you said, and you also go up to lake countries.
To lake countries.
Lake counties, I mean, the counties. Sorry, sorry. Oops, I just hit my microphone. To the lake counties. No, lake country. Am I wrong with there?
No, there are lakes in the Shasta area.
Okay, the Shasta. So tell me more about because you like to go up there quite often. And you do a lot of, you said you do photography work up there, so you can...
Right, so I can refer to compositions in landscape.
Okay, well,
and
very
it's
good.
very inspiring to me.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your your upcoming shows or some competitions you're in or some of your future plans?
Well, I just got into a national juried exhibition at Chico Arts Center, which will be, have a pastel going in there in November, and then in December I have Belmont Arts Council solo show at the Twin Pines Gallery.
Well, congratulations. That's
Thank
wonderful.
You.
Now, what do you want to say exactly when it is? Do you remember when the Belmont show is? Your solo show?
The Belmont show will be the month of December.
The whole month? Okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I look forward to going to your reception for that show.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much.
Be sure to invite you.
Okay, and now we're going to talk with Nancy Wheeler.
Hi, Susie.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for coming tonight. And you've actually been to many of the shows in our studio audience for some of our other ones. Nancy, now you're Nancy with an E at the end of your name. Now, where did the E come from?
I made it up. I just wanted it to be different, you know.
So you started out, actually, when you first came to SOLA, I think you were Nancy with a Y.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
That's still my legal name. But when I was little, I always thought that was the most boring name because there were 3 other girls in my grade school who had the name Nancy. So I thought it was just too boring.
There probably was only 3 other girls in your whole class, right? Because you grew up in farm country. So and Mimi likes to go to the farm country to get out of the city. You actually came from farm country. You grew up on a big farm.
Yeah.
And so that's where a lot of your love of nature scenes and color actually came from growing up on the farm and seeing all these fantastic colors and shapes. And
that's right. I mean, it's very inspiring to me. I enjoy the scenery, and there are certain images that I still remember. I still remember in the winter. The very dark Illinois soil that had been plowed up, and you get the snowdrifts, pristine white snowdrifts, and then you get that black and white, black and white, black and white all the way down the field.
Beautiful. So yeah, I know what you're talking really about.
Great. And sometimes there would be ice storms. I remember one time standing out, and the whole landscape had turned into a lacy crystal palace.
Wow.
And I wanted to capture it, so I was out there with my camera, freezing. Trying to get it before the ice melted away.
Was it windy over there where you were?
Oh, it's very windy because it's very open in the plains.
Oh, okay.
And so the winds would just whip across there. It could be very desolate in the winter. But in the spring, the fields would get, just after the snow melted, it'd be all nice and wet, and the fields would look like this velvety black. And then the little sprigs would pop up. See these rows of these little, they look like brave little things coming up out of the ground.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So do you have paintings of the little...
No.
No. Now, one thing you told me about was your mother did not come from windswept areas.
No.
And so it was very unsettling for her.
Yeah, she was from Tennessee, and they actually lived up on the top of Lookout Mountain.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really great because we used to go to visit my grandmother there, and you could see all the valley, and she'd look across to Signal Mountain, and she'd go, "My best friend is over there."
Oh,
and, yeah, it's great.
So she's used to being from far away. Well, many people from far away from their homes, just like how you grew up on the farm with your neighbor being a little speck on the distance. So now your mom also recognized that you had art ability, so she signed you up for night classes.
Yes.
When you were in high school, were you younger than high school?
Oh, actually, she started me out in grade school.
Grade school, okay. Yeah. So you went to the high school and you taught, you were taught by a professor from a neighboring college. And this professor helped you out in more ways than just teaching you new art techniques, but he also pushed you beyond. You actually tell a story about what happened to you when you were in grade school. Your first art teacher.
Well, my first art teacher used to come in and look at my work, and she'd say, "Oh, you've got something good there. Now don't mess it up. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but don't mess it up." And then she'd walk away, and then you'd be like frozen, right? What do I do now? I mean, what if I mess it up? Because sometimes she'd come back later and go, "Oh, you messed it up," right? And it's it used to get me into gridlock.
How horrible.
I used to be kind of a timid painter after that. And what happened is when I was working with this professor, Professor Collins was his name, he would kind of push me. He'd make me angry. I don't recall exactly how he'd do it, but he'd make me feel like, hey, I'm not going to let him say I can't do that, right? I can do it.
A little reverse psychology on you?
Yeah, a little reverse psychology, and he'd get me, and then I'd get bold, and I'd do it just because he said I couldn't do it, you know.
Oh, that's great. But you remember him? You remember his name?
Oh, I remember him.
That's great.
Quite well, yes.
That's great. Let's see. I wanted to ask you about. Okay, so you started out in Illinois. You went to Purdue. You took some art classes when you were in college as well. Was it the college where Dr. Collins was?
Oh,
Professor Collins? No. Okay. So because you went to Purdue, which was far away from your town where you grew up, and then when you were there, you decided this. You know, I think you told me it was during your time. It was in the early '80s that you were in college.
Yes.
And for you, it was time of women empowerment, and so you wanted to make sure that you had the ability to do what you wanted to and not be limited by money, and so you got a degree in material science, right?
Yeah, metallurgical engineering.
Metallurgical engineering, and you were thinking, well, I can be a sculptor if I understand materials at this level.
Right.
So you had your art, the future, but you wanted to have your material, your financial needs sewn up as well. Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to be independent, and but I always thought in the back of my mind, well, at some point I need to segue into art.
Sure.
It was. But it's funny how you have this desire to be independent. Independence means money, and engineering's a little more secure from a financial standpoint. So, but then you have this need to also be an artist. So you're kind of torn between the two.
So you came here after your degree. And you ended up coming right at the, when Silicon Valley is just starting to bubble, and you're working for Intel. So you got to do the other California dream, in the '80s, which is to ride the big bubble up. That's of course, then it got to pop, popped, which we all know. So you felt that too. Very painful. Very yes, painful. We all felt that pain. And so now you have a little bit more realistic, and you look at the younger people coming in and saying, the dream is there, but it's
I try not to be too cynical, but you see, and fresh-faced kids, they come out of college
and they think they're going to become a millionaire in a year.
And I try not to jade them just by my experience, because they're going to have the thing is they're going to have a whole different experience.
That's true.
Right? It's like art. You can both be painting the same object, but it's a totally different painting.
Yeah.
And so for them, Silicon Valley will be a completely different Silicon Valley than it was for me.
Yeah. That's true. But you got to ride that.
I know, it was fun.
It's part of the history books, just like Mimi with her history of Berkeley during the Nam War, which is pretty amazing, and it's ingrained in everybody's memory, and so will the Silicon Valley bubble and burst. So you are not a sculptor, though.
No, I'm not.
You didn't become a sculptor.
No.
You started painting also, and you paint in acrylics. And we have, actually what I want to do is to look at your studio, and to look at Mimi's studio too. I don't know if we can do both studios. I don't know if it makes a difference at this point, but let's see if maybe we'll bring them up at the end of the show and look at your studios that you have here in California. But I do want to look at your paintings that you brought along in JPEGs. So we have 2 paintings that you brought. One of them is called Big Red, and the other one is called Flowering Trees, I think. So I don't know, see which. Oh, here comes Big Red. Now this one, it has a personal connection to you with that building. Your brother designed, or he was on a team that designed and built that building.
He built the building.
In Arizona.
He's not an architect, but he built the building.
He owns a construction.
Yes.
All right. And so it's a condo in Arizona.
Yeah, it's a big condo complex, and it was his biggest project. And I was so proud of him, and it was such a big project. And the building turned out so beautiful. That red, it looks gorgeous there against the Mojave Desert and with the Colorado River in front of it. So it just turned out so wonderful that I wanted to paint a painting for him.
That's nice.
So I did.
That's great. And we have another one too that I wanted to bring up as well. This is a little bit different. It's Flowering Trees. Wow, look at that. Looks very Asian. Now you went to Japan.
Yes.
Intel sent you to Japan for a couple years. Gee, I wonder why. and so you're very influenced by, obviously, I can tell by this painting here, you're very influenced by the Japanese style of painting.
I think I started to become influenced when I came to California because, of course, there's a lot of Asian influence here. But then once I went to Japan, I really loved the scenery there, and I got to tour a little bit around Asia as well as Japan. So I do see very much an influence in my work.
Yeah, yeah, that was beautiful painting. It's a beautiful painting. Now, unlike what we just heard from Mimi a moment ago, you don't like the competition in the art world. You've got a different tact on going through life and going through your art career as well, and it stops you, because I think you were telling me that you look at the competition, you try to paint something for a particular competition, and it's just like, oh, I have to be inspired a different way.
Yeah, I found that it kind of fractionated my work, and it wasn't helping me. I wasn't inspired by the competition. I felt like I was always trying to fit into it, and that was taking me away from how my work would grow naturally. And I felt that it wasn't helping me, so I didn't do it. Didn't do it, right.
Yeah. So let's see, we have, what else do I want to talk to you about? Takes this. All right, well, your San Francisco Misty Morning. You've got one more painting here. Now, have any of these paintings that you showed us today, have they been in competitions?
No.
Do you think? No? Okay.
No.
Well, thank you for bringing them in. I love this. So now we have one more here. I don't know if you can get this one on the camera or not. Sometimes I worry about the studio glare. Can you tell us about this painting behind us?
Well, this painting I painted, I went to the Legion of Honor in San Francisco, which of course you get that beautiful vista there. And I went with a dear friend of mine, so we were having a great time. We brought our cameras and we took a bunch of photos. So when I got back, I was so inspired, and I kind of laid out all the photos. I mean, that's the beauty of digital photo, right? You can get them right away. Yeah. And I laid out all the photos, and I composed a composition and went through, did my value studies and you know, all those types of things, and ended up with this.
It's a beautiful painting. Thank you. Looks great. Maybe we could. Do we have time to show the studios of those 2 artists? Yeah, we do. Okay. So I'd like to look at the studios that we have, the 2 California studios. They're actually real similar. Now this is your studio right here. Take a look at your studio there. So it's my studio. You've got a blank canvas, and I think that's very telling that you blank canvas is like the white paper.
Yeah, that's the hard part for me.
Yeah. So you've talked about being blocked sometimes, so which I didn't hear anything about that from Mimi. You seem to be like overflowing with things going on. So both of you have spent a lot of time, a significant amount of your time in different places, like in Mexico, Guadalajara, and in Japan. So, well, the studio's gone from there. I wanted to talk about your studio a little bit, but that's all right. I guess it's gone. Can you tell me a little bit about how you work in your studio and what that does for you when you're there?
Well, for me, it's always a constant fight against the clutter.
Oh, yeah.
So I have to clear out a space. I like my workspaces fairly neat, but I'm a person who collects a lot of stuff. So it's a battle between how I like to work and how I like to collect. But once I'm in there, you know, the outside world doesn't exist, and you know, once I start mixing colors, yeah, I love mixing colors. It becomes very meditative, and I start thinking about, you know, what's the mood, what's the story of the painting, what do I want that painting to
Now you work in acrylics, you don't have to worry about smell too much, but you work, Mimi, you work in oil. So can we quickly get up her studio too? Because you actually look very similar, but no, we don't have time for that. Okay, all right, well, your studio looks very similar. Now, do you have any air issues, or do you have windows or fans, or what do you do?
The room's well ventilated, and I use a fan as well.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we're wrapping it up here. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you
and,
for having me.
Nancy and Mimi, thank you very much. And so now we meet once a month at Pacific Art League, usually. Sometimes we've met other places like the Triton Museum. And we have speakers, and we also show our own art to each other, and we judge each other's art. So and that's a lot of fun. And sometimes people don't always bring their artwork in. Not every member does, but we always have a good selection to look from. And twice a year we have the salon. Now the next time we have a salon is going to be this winter. We have it twice a year, once in the summer, and this year we decided to switch with a speaker due to their conflicts. So this year we have our salon in January. So get ready for that. In the salon, you should bring in something you're not quite sure about, something different that you do, and you want to talk about it because you'll get 10 minutes. So we're inviting everyone else to, any other artist that's watching the show, to please come to the SOLA. If we could have the website up, please, the svlocalartists.org, and it gives you all the different meetings that we have and who's speaking and when we have our different events. So, are we going to get the svlocalartists.org up on the computer? I mean, there it is. Oh, we're ending. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you,
Carl and Becky and Eric and Marty, and all their names are showing up right there. Okay. Very good.